Hi, I'm Carl Persing. I'm here to talk to you today about industrial organizational psychology. It's my pleasure to be here and always really to talk about psychology and help people who are, thinking of coming into this discipline or are already on their way into this discipline or trying to find their way in this discipline. Um, I have a variety of topics I'll talk to you about. I'll talk to you a little bit about IO psychology itself, try to familiarize yourself a little bit with the work that IO psychologists do, and um, and I'll talk a little bit about myself. Maybe you'll see yourself in some of my circuitous paths through psychology and through work and so forth. And yeah, so what I'll do is I'll get started here. I'll share my screen in a second and walk you through some slides. Okay. All right. So I have this slide set for you. Um, I'm not going to put it into presentation mode because it puts my slides all over different screens and so forth. So we'll just work in this. Like I said, I'll talk about my career journey, what I've done, what it's like to do some of the jobs that I've done in the various areas of IO psychology, pros and cons of everything really, and some person job fit considerations, things I think about a lot, especially in the work that I do, and about myself, daily. And yeah, I don't know how many questions I can really answer, but I will try to generate them as I go along and answer things as think that you might be thinking about things. So some of the things that I've been asked to address: who I am, why I wanted to be in the field, my educational background, my work history, what I do now. And I'll talk about some of the daily job duties I've done at a variety of different jobs within psychology. And I'll have some advice for you. I have three opinions on every topic, so I'm sure I'll pick out something to tell you. Good. So first of all, before I get into what I've done and talk about myself, I want to talk a little bit about IO psychology, so you kind of have a idea about the I and the O in IO. So industrial psychology is very analytical. It's very stats oriented, very psychometrically oriented, and it has to do a lot with um, measuring measurement of jobs and every aspect of it. The jobs, the things you do, the people within it, the activities, and so forth. In industrial psychology, we do a lot of job analysis because everything really springs from that. In job analysis, you analyze the job and you basically, understand what critical incidents are necessary or involved in the job to do the job well, and the variety of behaviors necessary, and some things like the competencies or abilities of people in the jobs. What do they have to do, and what is it that they may have to have about themselves that allow them to do that job. Um, and then from there, you can, once you know what the job's about and what the job entails, you can, write job ads. You can, those job ads on Monster and Indeed, that you look at and say, oh, the incumbent will do X, Y, and Z. That is supposed to come from a thorough and scientifically based job analysis with a lot of subject matter experts and incumbents within the job giving feedback on to an industrial psychology about what makes up that job in terms of, like I just said, the activities and so forth that are necessary. And then from there, once you know what the job is, what has to be done, and what the attributes of the person need to be to do that job, then you can get into selection. You can start looking at, the different qualities of the person that would be successful. And you can test people on the basis of that job analysis. You can test people on what they're like, their personality, their abilities, their experience, to see if they would be a good fit. And we statistically determine whether these measures that we come up with that we think are going to predict good job performance actually do. So we test criterion validity. And also classification. So, someone's selected into the organization. Well, where do we put them? Where would they be best to fit? And that's something else we do. Training, because training comes out of a job analysis, so to speak. You need to know what to train people on, and what shortcomings or issues that they're facing in doing that job to know what to train them on, or else it's just a waste of time and money. Um, and performance measurement. So in order to tell you if you're getting a raise or not, they need to know, the company needs to know whether you're doing your job well. Well, if you don't have a job analysis, you don't know, really what this person's supposed to be measured on. So really everything in um, you know, a job, from the selection and classification, it all comes from the job analysis, or at least it should. As I said earlier, industrial psychology is super stats and psychometrically oriented. There's areas that are not as so as others, but as I said here, quants will inherit the earth in this area, and it's true. I mean, it's a lot of statistical analysis. Everything is empirical, and so if you really like to do math, and you're good at it anyway, whether you like to do it, whether you're good at it, this is a place where a lot of psych majors do really well financially. Psych majors that work in quantitative psychology, researchers, and so forth, they can do very well because um, that math skill is very important, and understanding how to set up a research study properly and how to analyze it, especially using R now. The new stats package is not SPSS anymore, it's R. And a lot of people in this area especially, they won't even look at your resume for the most part, if you don't have R. I've been on many hiring committees, and it's just getting so that R is the new stats package that everyone uses. It's extremely powerful anymore. It does a lot of things well, and once you get to use it, it's not all that hard. And trust me, I never wanted to become a computer programmer, but R is definitely there's it's not that hard to learn how to use it once you really dig in. And I've recently went through some training and had to, get my skill set ramped up on R. So I'm fresh out of that, and I'm here to tell you, it's not that hard, even for someone that's, a older practitioner in the area. And believe me, I used to teach SPSS for many years, and I'm very good at that. I can write syntax and so forth, but R is the new way to go. Um, Also in industrial psychology, there's the legal defensibility of the things that you do, not only the tests that you use, but of a lot of the selection methods that are employed. So if you're interested in law, this is another sub area of industrial psychology that is very lucrative as well, and is very open to people who are good at those skills. Organizational psychology, on the other hand, it's deals with the organizational development, motivation, attitudes, leadership, and things like that. So it's some people might say it's a little softer than the I side, and if we're talking about math skills, to some degree, it is. The things that we work on, the data sets are different. A lot of times there's qualitative data involved in organizational psychology. So, from surveys, if there's open-ended items on a survey, to analyze that. It's a different skill set. But it's very rigorous and it's very, scientifically and research based. So, it's not in any way a lesser, sister or brother or cousin or whatever to I. It's definitely important. I worked in the O side of industrial psychology for about 10 years, and I'll talk about that as I go forward. Um, a lot of organizational psychology comes from, or the work actually that gets done comes out of surveys and interventions within an organization to find out where issues are, right? Because a business leader is really not going to have a IO psychologist or a consultant come in unless there's problems, and that's obviously, we talk about preventative medicine, right? So preventative work within an organization would certainly prevent problems. But the reality is, a lot of organizations, find a problem they want to fix, and that's when they'll call an industrial psychologist or an organizational psychologist. So in the training, you're trained in both, right? That's something that an IO psychologist usually gets a little bit or a lot of both sides. There are some organizational psychology programs that definitely lean more toward the O side. Usually in an I program, you'll still get a lot of O. There'll still be a lot there, but a lot of times in an O program, there'll be less emphasis on that I side stuff. How's industrial psychology different from business, right? So we got these MBAs, and they know all about business. Why don't you just go into that? And the answer is that MBAs know a lot about business, but they tend to treat labor and people as a kind of a constant. Now, there are many MBAs out there that do, that have studied or do work in HR and employee relations and so forth, labor relations. But that's kind of not what I'm talking about. A straight up MBA is usually, trained in finance or marketing or things like that. If they are trained in HR, they will have some skills within that area. But a lot of times, it's more about the business side of HR. It's not as much emphasis on human psychology. It just isn't. They will have classes in that, and they may do, some work that's very psychologically based, but strictly trying to categorize an MBA won't have the same skill set as a psychologist. So the other thing is, the types of analyses, the type of research that we do is usually based on that human element, and that's not, you know to say that an MBA wouldn't do that, but an MBA generally would be more involved in again, the business side of things, or quantifying business outcomes. And that's not a bad thing for a psychologist to know something about, because in order to drive value in an organization, you need to be able to talk of business. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But you really need to be thinking about the needs and the strategies and goals of the businesses that you go into, right? I mean, of course, you're there to work on talent, but the talent fits in, the talent plan, the talent strategy should fit into the overall organization's goals and strategies. And a lot of times psychologists don't think about that, and that makes them less popular with business leaders, because you're not talking the same language. You don't have the same priorities. If a psychologist goes in and acts like a straight up psychologist and wants to do studies and wants to analyze people, business leaders by and large won't see a value in that, in terms of profit, in terms of the outcomes, and their fiduciary responsibility is to make money for the organization and the stakeholders. So you have to speak to that. You have to line up what you do with an organization's needs. Okay, next slide. So the training of IO psychologists, there are really no bachelor's level IO psychologists, but there is training in at the bachelor level. And in fact, I'll tell you about my program, of which I was a director for 7 years, where we had a very strong undergraduate and a graduate industrial organizational psychology program. The students took a lot of business classes in the curriculum that I created. The students took a lot of business classes and understood what I just said about, how businesses function, and they had to have business acumen in order to know how to apply psychology to the workplace. And then masters. There's a lot of terminal master's degrees in IO, and there's also masters that you get along the way to getting a PhD. There is no PsyD in IO psychology. Um, Terminal masters students, they tend to do very well in the marketplace. They tend to make a lot of money in certain organizations, and they are in demand. It's a great degree to get. PhD, you always, that's the terminal degree, and that's always, something that's sought out by companies that are looking to have someone lead, um, projects, or to at least have a figurehead because of that research background, and that you can speak, with supposed authority, with, you know, or about psychology. And, so the PhD is obviously, it's the terminal degree. It's the degree that you'll probably need if you want to go into being a professor, academics. It's a research degree, so it shows that you were trained as a researcher and so forth. So, those are the kind of distinctions that get thought about in the marketplace. A master's level person is usually seen as a person who is, you know, on the job, running projects, doing the hardcore analyses, doing the work. And a lot of times PhDs will be used as, sometimes just figureheads, or leaders of a group of IO psychologists. The training that IO espouses is the scientist practitioner model. You are trained as a scientist and a practitioner. So you know how to generate knowledge, and you learn how to use knowledge as well. And that's the model that we use. And it's useful because one leads into the other. I mean, to use knowledge, you see the things where the knowledge is short, or where we need more knowledge. And then to be able to generate that knowledge, be able to fill those gaps, and then use that knowledge that you've generated, is kind of the idea behind this whole scientist practitioner. And while a lot of times in the field you don't get to use your scientist side as much, if you're doing practitioner type of work, um, you know, again, it's you're working under a contract. You stated certain things that you're going to do within the organization. To just say, hey, I think we need more knowledge here. I'm going to run a survey, or I'm going to do this or that. You could certainly propose that, but it's constrained by the contract, and so forth, and what you're able to ask that company to pay you to do. So but being able to do that, and being able to know what needs to be done, again, feeds into that scientist model, that you know how to do the research, you know how to generate the knowledge that you need to fix a problem. And the practitioner side is actually knowing how to wield that knowledge to fix the problem. IO psychology is very tight, or very closely affiliated with our society, and that's the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology, or SIOP as we call it. Um, there's an incredible affinity and closeness with this organization, and a lot of IO psychologists every year make their way to the SIOP conference to kind of get nourished at the mothership, as I say. They're they learn. there's symposium and paper sessions and posters and so forth where you learn about the latest research so you can take it back there and either use it or continue that research and extend it. So that's a little bit about that. You can see sciop.org. There's a wealth of information on there for you if you are interested in this field. And like I said, that's kind of our mothership. We go there for nourishment and knowledge. And there's a very, very tight knit group there that I've got to say, I received because of SciOp. It's where I pretty much received every job I had within IO psychology, from the connections I've made or the people I've known from there. So it's a very powerful organization in our existence. So what do IO psychologists do and where do they work? So again, with the scientist practitioner, look, if you get to do both, I've gotten to do both in some of the work that I've done, and it's lots of fun because if you're a psych nerd and you love to do research and you also love to work with it, you're in the right place. But you also all need to understand and care about business, at least to some degree. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a business major, but you've got to at least know some things about business and how to conduct yourself within an organization like that to be successful. So these are some rough data that I pulled from a slide. I grabbed a couple slides from a textbook here, but so we say about 40% are professors, 20% work in private organizations, meaning all kind of different companies that employ IO psychologists. 6% work in public organizations, which would be also the government, and 35 working consulting firms. And that kind of where it kind of blurs where the consulting and the private organization starts and stops. But generally this is the breakdown. And you can go to sciop.org and get very updated numbers, every year. So I've kind of did a Tarantino. I started, from the end and worked to the beginning in some ways. I didn't really introduce myself very extensively beyond my name, but I'm like I said, a psychologist that has worked in a variety of areas within psychology. The questions that I showed you in the beginning, who I am, what I've done, it kind of springs out of this, but I will go a little bit deeper, when I talk about my blue collar background. I was raised, pretty much in, a rural poverty area, and I had an early affinity for mechanical stuff. I've always loved vehicles and any kind of mechanistic type of device. And as a kid, I used to like tear bicycles apart and reconfigure them with different parts on and so forth. And I used to play in old trucks and bulldozers. They were a constant in my life growing up. And I still remember the look and feel and smell of those old machines. And I always had this desire to know what made things tick. And I guess that's a big part of the secret sauce, I guess, that makes me a psychologist. And I spent my early life in school. I did not go to a college prep program. I was vocational education. I was what we call a shoppy, Tech shop, and I did sheet metal and welding, and I loved it. I loved every second of it. I respected my teacher, and I loved what I was learning, and I could always see, the value in doing this, and I felt very proud of that work and those abilities. And as I got older, went through high school, I eventually working at McDonald's for 3 years, from the age of 16 till I was 19, because at the time I graduated, it was really hard economically to get a job, especially in our area. A lot of places were closing down. A lot of places, I couldn't apply those skills I had learned. And finally, I got a job welding, and I welded for about 3 years. I made all sorts of things, boilers and trailers and ornamental iron, wrought iron on people's porches. And I did that kind of work, welding machinery and so forth together. And at that point, I decided to start a excavating and paving company. So with my family, I started this company on a shoestring, putting old equipment together and making it work. And you know, it was a success. And eventually, by the time I sold it, I had 15 people working for that company, and doing a lot of work in the area, very well known. And so when that kind of went to the wayside, I said, what do I do? I started working as a mechanic again. I certified in cars and heavy trucks and so forth. So, again, this sheet metal and this vehicle and this, mechanical thing just looming large in my life. And I went to work as a mechanic for a good number of years, and at night I was kind of bored, so I decided that I was going to go to college and see what they learned up there. And having been in business, I've sorry about that. Having been in business for many years, I started taking business classes, but I always wondered what made people tick. Like, why do people do what they do? And that's how I got into taking psychology class, and I loved it. I did really well. I understood it. It all made sense to me, and I fell head over heels in love with psychology. So I decided at that point, after taking night classes for a couple of years and amassing about 40 some credits, I decided to go to school full time. So I quit my job and I went out in a shoestring, being a blue collar man all my life. And I went to college, and I knew how to do it quick because I had bills to pay. So I did 91 credits in 2 calendar years. And I ended up doing honors thesis, and a lot of classwork, and I was able to get straight into a doctoral program out of a bachelor's degree. I went to Bloomsburg University of Pennsylvania, and it was a fabulous program. I literally skated through grad school on the stuff that I knew from my undergrad. It was that intense and it was that good. I can't say enough. Not that I didn't learn anything in grad school, because I did, but I'll tell you a little secret about graduate school. You teach yourself to a large degree. You learn a lot of the stuff. Your professors structure the learning, but a lot of it is taking what you already know from your undergrad and applying it. So, got into grad school, and I studied social and personality psychology. I was not in an industrial organizational psychology program when I went to graduate school. I was well trained in a lot of different areas of psychology, in my grad program. And because of my business background, and because social psychology has a lot of parallels with industrial psychology, especially, social and personality are kind of studied together. I had a lot of the skill set already that I needed. And when I got out of graduate school, I started work as a professor and a director of an industrial organizational psychology program. And it was a great fit because it was something I loved. It was something I was able to do. And in addition to teaching all the other classes like intro psych and social psych and psychological tests and measures and things like that, I taught at the undergrad and the doctoral or master's level too. So I was teaching across this broad spectrum of classes. Plus, I was running this IO program, teaching IO classes and so forth, and coordinating this program. Helping the students to get internships and to learn how to go out into the world as IO psychologists. And I will say that I have a lot of very successful students that I'm very, very proud of, and I still stay in contact with, to this day. And it's been many years. It's quite a while. So um, after I was a professor for about 7 years, my next career move was to actually do what I taught. And I moved from academics into my first job, um, applying industrial psychology as an external consultant with Metris Group. It was a company that did a lot of employee surveys and organizational development. And I have to say that it was a big leap. You kind of think that, well, you make personality tests, you test hypotheses and so forth. How different could this be? But it was a eye opener, to go from academics for 7 years into being in an organization where I had to very quickly go in, assess a problem, and make recommendations and so forth. And so that work, really the way it worked, my daily activities there was conducting, building surveys within organizations, and then collecting the data, analyzing it, and presenting it back to the leadership of the organization, and telling them where their hot spots were, where their good spots and their opportunities or problems were, and telling the leaders of the organizations how those problems could be made better. And that's the kind of organizational development, leadership development, executive and C-suite coaching that comes, and the training that comes out of those surveys. So you go in there, they know there's a general problem. They don't exactly know what it is or what its root cause is. You run the survey, you go into the organization, you find out what the root cause is, and then you present it to the leadership. So you're a psychologist, but you're also talking pure business, because when people are talking to you about their problem, if you're going in to do focus groups or understanding the company deeper, you're going to be having people talking about business activities. And so understanding and having an affinity for that, liking to think about business as well as people in business, is really a strong point. And since I had that background in business, I knew all the problems that I had had as a business owner. I was able to not only understand what they were saying, but really at a deep level, I'd experienced it before, and it helped and gave some gravitas to the work that I did, because I was able to talk with a lot of authority about that. So also, though, sales and marketing, you see there under things I did, and that's necessary. A lot of times you say, well, I'm a psychologist, I'm not a salesperson, or a marketer. But we're all salespeople. We're all marketers when you're in the workforce, because you're constantly looking for your next job. You eat what you kill, so to speak. So a lot of times you're required to do those sales talks or upsells or whatever. If you see a problem within an organization, you have to bring it to someone's attention, either your salespeople or the people in the organization themselves, and say, hey, we know how to fix this. We can help you with this. And here's what it's going to cost. And, so having that kind of skill set is important. The jobs that you have, high school and college, they'll give you experience in a lot of different things that you'll see, if you become a psychologist out there in the field, doing IO work. And when I was at Metris Group, um, and I mean, even after Metris Group, I would do various consulting gigs to companies, and actually, I would consult to other consultants. So it was a lot of fun, seeing the different ways that different organizations work, and I was able to fly all over the country and even outside of it sometimes to different companies and different places. I've done so many different industries, and I had the pleasure of working with so many really bright business people. And being a bright business person and being good at handling talent and people within an organization isn't necessarily the same thing. I had very super sharp business people who didn't know how to talk to people at all. And then I've also seen business people who are great at business and great at talking to people, and the talent side, the human side of their organization. So there's a whole spectrum of management out there that you're going to have to quickly assess and see what they know, and how much you can help them, how much they buy into what psychologists do and can do for them. So then my next job, after about 7 or 8 years at Metris Group, was as an internal IO. So as an external consultant, I traveled around. I was employed by a consulting firm that traveled around to help other companies. As an internal, I worked as an IO inside the organization. And I got really lucky there because I got to kind of have the best of both worlds, being internal consultant. I created, they needed someone to create and lead an internal survey practice within the company. And that's what I did. So then my entrepreneur skills and traits and bent that I love to do business, that I love to build businesses, came in handy there, because basically I built a business within a business. And we set it up, and our customers were all the different business units within the organization. They needed to know data. They needed to know things about their people, how their training was going, how their onboarding was going, how their experiences were in the organization, what needed to be made better to keep people there longer. Retention is a big thing in retail and fast food and other places too, but retail, it's important. So all these things could be answered through data. And being an industrial organizational psychologist, how to conduct these inquiries and do the research in an organization to be able to get to answers, and to be able to project those answers, and help the business leaders to formulate ways to make things better. So after that, I joined InfoSytex, the company I'm with now, as a scientist practitioner. So I'm a staff IO psychologist. I work with a team of IOs on the I side. And I always felt as though that was the side that, if you look at my other work, that I didn't get to do. I did the external consulting thing, a lot of O work, almost all O work. Same way with the internal IO position, was O work. So I did 10 years of O work, and I didn't get a chance to do much I side stuff. So I wanted to do that, and that's why I joined InfoSytex. And it's a really cool position, because I get to lead projects for our government customers, our military customers, to figure out problems and figure out better ways to select and classify in the military. So some of the things that we work on will be selection tests for the military. The Air Force in particular has tests for enlisted and officers, and taking the scores from those tests and learning how to better predict success in the jobs that they do within the Air Force is very important. And so again, this whole psychometrics, this whole statistical analysis, it's very, very, very intense stats work. And you're constantly doing real research. I can honestly say that this job is more of a researcher even than what you would think of as an academic researcher. You think of researchers, at research one institutions, that you never even get to meet the really cool people in the field, because they're behind, in their labs doing their work, and their graduate students are teaching classes. I would say our research rivals that. that level. I mean, every day, all day long, we are doing research, literature reviews, and so forth. Trying to figure out, okay, what does the combined knowledge base have to tell us that can give some insights into this problem that we're working on today. So it's really really uh, cool job, and it's very research and uh, quantitatively intense. So you've heard me talk about some of the things I've done. Let me talk about some of the things that IO psychologists do that I haven't talked about. You can see here that research methods, stats, psychometrics I've talked about, business and consulting, the whole ethical, legal, and professional context of IO psychology. We work in a litigious society, right? So you have to know what you can do and what you can't do, and the extent of which you can do things. Um, Things like history and systems, attitude theory, measurement, career development. Um, those are things that are more academic in some natures. I mean, we use those things, um, but unless you're working in marketing or a very select small group of organizations, you're probably not going to do that kind of stuff. Consumer behavior. I'm actually involved right now with a company that does some um, marketing and consumer behavior research, and I'm kind of able to help them out with some of their questions, and be able to get to some answers that their customers are looking at. Health and stress in organizations. That's an interesting field. OHP, occupational health psychology. That's kind of an offshoot of IO psychology, but it's also a discipline almost onto itself. It's related to social personality. That's something too that is becoming more and more important. You usually don't see smaller companies getting involved much in that. It's usually the very biggest companies that will be able to, allow a consultant to come in and work and run studies and so forth. Human performance and human factors engineering, that's a sister discipline, I would say. A lot of human factors people that I work with in my present job, they don't necessarily call themselves IO psychologists. They don't study the same things as we do, but it's very related. Understanding ergonomics and how people work and the way they interact with machinery and so forth, and the tools that they use. So there is that human element in it, but it's a very, very cool, interesting field as well. And then, when we assess people, and maybe this should be more over on the other side there with the psychometrics, individual assessment centers. So when you give someone a psychological test to see if they, would fit into an organization, personality tests, cognitive ability tests, and individual assessment tests then are kind of hands-on. How would you go about the day in the life of that person in that job? And so IO psychologists create tests like that as well. Some of the other competencies that are things that we study, individual differences, personality, job evaluation, compensation. Not so much in some companies. There's a lot of consulting companies that will do that type of work. So you're probably not doing that within an organization as much as a consultant, but there are internals that do that too. As I said, job and task analysis, some judgment and decision making, especially when you're doing um, various tests like situational judgment tests and things like that. That's kind of involved in that work. Again, leadership and management, organizational development. I've done that. I've told you about that. Performance appraisal and feedback. There's a whole science behind learning how to do a good performance appraisal, appraising the work that people do, measuring it, quantifying it, and using it to make decisions and determine pay and so forth. And then, as I said, the personnel recruitment, selection, placement, classification, and things like training. How do you train? What's the best way to train? How much do you train? Do you train all at once, or do you do it piecemeal? Do you let the person go out and get their hands on the job and a little bit and then train them, or do you train them first, let them get their hands on the job? There's a lot of different ways to look at this, and there's a whole part of IO psychology dedicated to this. Work motivation, what motivates people, and how do you keep them motivated? Does money motivate? Um, some people maybe, but there's a lot of different theories behind human motivation, and getting to apply them is more on the O side, but definitely interesting and definitely part of some of the work that some IOs do. And this is not an exhaustive list. And one thing I will say here, if you're really interested in IO psychology and your school doesn't have a program, or if you want to, or even a class in IO psychology, you want to learn more, go online, get yourself a cheap IO textbook, or two or three. Like I'm talking a $5 textbook, and read it. And if you find yourself falling asleep, then maybe that's not the job for you. But if you find yourself enthralled with it, maybe this is the field, but it's not hard to be able to kind of evaluate this field and at least learn more about what's going on. Going to psyop.org, looking at stuff there, and different stuff online, you'll be able to feel your way through. Are you interested in this stuff? And you might not be interested in everything, and that's okay. If you find an area or two within IO psychology that you're interested in, that's great, because you can specialize in those areas. Of course, you'll be trained in the whole realm of IO psychology, but once you get out, you can specialize, and especially do your master's thesis or your PhD dissertation in those areas that you're most interested. And of course, you'll select a school by whether they are a grad school, by whether they are strong in that area, or if they have professors that study that area. So that's how you pick your way through a grad school selection process. So, how to succeed in IO psychology, or really in any psych field? Um, I've been harping on the fact that you need to know and speak business. Um, a lot of managers don't know how to deal with people. They don't know how to deal with people in terms of getting them to do what they want them to do, understanding why they do what they do, and that's where you come in. But you have to be able to show your value in terms of the business. What's important to the business? Again, growth, profit, sales, things like that. Those are the things that a company wants to know about. The managers, the businesses that don't get what you'll do, or don't get what you do, is probably not fertile ground for sales for IO psychology. It's if the company doesn't understand and doesn't have a belief that things can be changed, and you can't convince them that things can be changed, you're probably not going to get much work there, or you're not going to be happy working there. So, how do you forge your own path within IL psychology? As I just kind of said, there's a lot of different areas to specialize in. So, figure out early on what you find interesting, and then you can spend the most time channeling your learning, channeling your time and your effort and your reading and your internships and so forth into those areas to make people convinced, or able to be convinced, that you are an expert in that area. And that's how you get hired. So again, your actions are going to define your career trajectory. The fact that you went out and found an internship while everybody else, went home in grad school, or in even undergrad, and they're having dinner and enjoying their time off and you're doing an internship or you're doing extra work somewhere, that speaks volumes. And don't ever think that it doesn't. It not only gives you the knowledge and skill and hopefully some money, it also allows you to get ahead. People will perceive that, they'll ask you to tell your story in a job interview. And you can tell a story that, well, at nights I did this, nah. Oh, wow. They're going to infer, they're going to make spontaneous train inferences that you're motivated, that you have interest, that you're someone that they want to, take a bet on and hire and develop. And we all want, to hire people or be around people that we think, are going to be successful and so forth, and that care about what they're doing. It's infectious. It's very, very heartwarming. So the more you can show that you do the things that you're interested in, and that you're trying to make yourself that complete professional, the more success you're going to have. It's almost inevitable. But you're going to have to put in the time and have to put in the work. So, speaking of internships, then don't wait around. Don't wait around for your program director. Don't wait around. Oh, I have to wait till my senior year internship class to get an intern. No, go out as a freshman and get yourself involved somehow, even if it's sweeping floors somewhere, in the company that does what you're interested in. And the sooner, like I said, as that what you're interested in, or even have an inkling that you might be interested in it, you go out and you do it, and you do it as much as you can. And that's the way that you find out, well, I don't like to do this. Okay, great. You just figured something out that's very valuable. You didn't have to waste a year or two after college finding it out. You found it out now. So now you can pivot and you can get your education or your experiences elsewhere that you might be interested. And you got to keep doing it, because the one thing you do can lead to the next, can lead to the next. And we can never tell where, things are going to pop up. What's new, what's, what opportunities we're going to have when we get out there and we just start doing stuff. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know what you're going to find out about yourself and others. So get out there, network, talk to people. What are you doing? What's it like at this company? What do you guys really do there? What's the management like? And just incessantly, always, always, always be out there, trying to learn more about your field and what you're interested in. It will pay big dividends. I guarantee it. So my advice, I talk really frankly about, some of the things that psych majors find after they get out in the field. A lot of people become psych majors because they're interested in psychology. They love the subject matter. We sit in class and we hear stories about things from our professors, or we read our books, our textbooks, and we just love it. It's just so cool. We hear about all these great experiments and great, psychologists that have made, names for themselves, and we think this is so cool. But actually going out and doing psychology is not the same as learning it. I will say something that I found out myself, and really kind of embarrassed about it. I never really thought about it, but the things that you do in class are the things you're going to do on the job. Professors don't make you write papers because they like you to write papers, or you'll learn from writing papers. That's true, you will, but you're going to do it when you're in the field. You're going to write reports. Those APA style papers that you have to write when you get a job, especially in a research field in IO psychology, you're going to be writing them, because you're going to be writing tech reports. You're going to be writing reports about the work that you've done, the research. You're going to try to be published. There's a lot of consulting companies that encourage publication. The military, the military contractor that I work for, they very much want to see you publish. Academics, they publish, right? Publish or perish. If you don't publish, you're not showing that you're a contributor to the field, and you're not making a name for yourself or your university that you're working for. So if you're not publishing, if you're not writing, if you're not doing that research, you're not going to go very far. And So that all ties back to what you're doing in class, right? You're learning these research methods, you're doing these stats. You have to sit down and learn how to use SPSS or some other statistical program. That doesn't go away. If you're in an applied or experimental psychology field like IO psychology, you're going to be doing all that every single day. And if you don't like doing something in school, you're probably not going to like it on the job. And if you can find the aspects of it that you do like, and there's enough of those, then you can maybe make a career out of it. Consider your personality, those things that your natural talents, what are your competencies are, and your preferences. If you love being outdoors, and it's like, oh, I have to go in now, I have to go sit in a class. When you have to sit in an office for 8, 10 hours a day, it's going to be a lot worse. So what you do in class is what you're going to do in the field. It might be different, and but it's there. And like I said, person, job, fit, being a psych major doesn't necessarily mean you're going to like being a psychologist. I loved, sitting in class, but it's definitely different being out there and doing the work. A lot of time behind the computer. You're sitting here 8, 10 hours a day, every single day, answering emails and doing project management and, writing your findings and doing analyses. It's computer work all day, every day. And if you don't like that, that's what it's about. Um, and getting paid for it. People, oh, when I get paid for it, I don't mind, right? Well, if you don't like it, you'll eventually not like it. Money makes things better for a little while, but money is by generally not a good motivator. It can be momentarily, especially when something's new. You get into a new job, a new field. Oh boy, this is great. I used to think that traveling for my consulting work was so cool. I mean, you're going to give me an airplane ticket and you're going to give me a rental car and you're going to give me a hotel room. It's like you're sending me on vacation. Uh-uh. First of all, it gets old because every time you're traveling, it always seems to happen on the times when you want to be doing something else. And second of all, it gets old quick. You probably heard that, from other people, and nah, never will. And maybe you're an adventurer and a traveler and so forth, but it's not like traveling on vacation. You're usually it's usually a very tight schedule. They're not going to pay you to just, leisurely, go to an airport and sit there all day or whatever. You got to work up until the time that you get to the airport, and then you're working in the airport, you're working on the airplane, you're working at night in the hotel room to get ready for the next day. It's not vacation. And then as soon as you're done there, a lot of times they'll time your departure right after the end of the day at the last day of the consulting gig. So you're not sightseeing. Now, sometimes you can take an extra day off or whatever and sightsee, but a lot of times it's off to the next job. So, getting paid is great, but it doesn't make something you don't like to do any better in the long run. So, I would encourage everyone to, really think about the the characteristics, your preferences, your traits, things that you like. It's great being a psych major, but if you're going to go into that field, make sure that it's something that you really want to do. And if you're a younger person, you have your whole life ahead of you. It doesn't hurt to get into the field and get your first job or two and go out and really find what makes you tick and what makes you happy. That's what it's all about. Sometimes you have to try something in order to know whether you love it or not. So this has been going on for about an hour now, um, and I'm not sure how much more I can say. Let me go back to the question slide. Okay, I talked about my background, my work history, what I do now, daily job. I've done pretty much. So I will conclude this talk, and I guess I could put my email out there, um, and let you guys email me if you have any questions. Actually, a better idea would be look me up on LinkedIn, and you can read some of the things I have up there, and connect with me there if you have any questions. Just make sure you say I saw your talk or whatever, and um, I'll I'll make a connection with you. So I'm sure there's other things that I could talk about that perhaps you'd want to hear. Like I said, hit me up on LinkedIn, and I can answer any further questions. But I hope that this has been illuminating, and talk about what an IO psychologist does, and the experience of somebody who's done a lot of different things within the psych field. I've I've done the trifecta. I've been the academic, I've been an internal, I've been an external. I've been on the O side, I've been on the I side. I work for businesses, I work for government. I work for nonprofits. I've worked for, as a consultant, I've consulted to those types of companies. Big companies, Fortune 200 companies, mom and pop companies. So it's been very interesting. It's been a really cool career, and it's hard to believe that I've been doing it as long as I have. Probably, depending on where you start me at, I'd say at least 15 years. I've been out in the field 20 years, and doing this work. So I've enjoyed it. There's parts, I'll be honest, there's parts of my job that I really, really love. And you could wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning to talk about, and I wouldn't even be mad. There's other parts of my job that it's just very difficult for me because of my personal, preferences, and things that I like to do versus what the demands are. And so, hopefully you have more fit than non-fit, and that the enjoyable parts of your job, make the less enjoyable parts of your job tolerable, because you can't wait to get to that better part. And it's a very exciting field and very interesting. And if you really truly love psychology, and you really have an affinity for business, IO Psych might just be for you. So as I said, look up job ads for IO psychologists. Look what they're asked to do. If you're interested in this field, buy a couple textbooks. Like I said, you could probably get them for $5-10. Some older ones. It's all the same. I mean, they update them, but they're all the same. Get something 10 years old. It's going to tell you just the same things as a newer book, except for a few new references. So get an old book for $5, and or hit the library and see if you can find them. They usually don't carry the textbooks in the library, the bookstore, wherever. See if you can get some old IO Psych books. Read them up. See if you like it. See if there's areas that you like more than others, and that's how you would make your decision to go to graduate school in IO. So I hope this has helped a lot. I've really enjoyed doing this for you. Um, and like I said, if you want to link up on LinkedIn, um, you know, find me there. So thank you very much for listening, if you're still here, and have a good career. And thank you. Bye bye.